It is so wonderful to be back on this beautiful and abundant island. I've been here many times, and just landing is a whole amazing experience. It's like coming home in a way. I want to honor this woman who introduced me, Nancy. Talk about energetic women, Walter. I mean, my goodness. I mean, not only is this woman an amazing woman of the land, if you've ever been to her farm, her husband's farm, it is the most amazing biodiverse place you can ever imagine. It brings tears to your eyes. But she's also one of the most experienced people in the legislature, and incredibly effective lobbyist in the legislature, which is, I mean, done amazing things on that. She's one of the greatest fighters against GE on this entire, really, the state. I mean, you've just done amazing jobs. And lately, I don't know how you even did this. I mean, how many school gardens have you? I mean, just from 65 school gardens. You know, all week I felt a little bad being one of the speakers saying, well, shouldn't I MC and have Nancy actually tell you all those things? But she adds modesty to her extraordinary accomplishments. I also want to thank everyone who made this possible. Jerry DiPietro, where are you? And a special thank you out to the Series Trust. Kent and Judy, where are you? These two amazing people make so much of this happen. Thank you so much. Kent Whaley, Judy Kern, Series Trust. Thank you so much for all you do for this state, this island. I can't resist, I'm sorry to say. By the way, it is true that I was named one of the 100 leading visionaries by Utne Reader. And then they asked us several of us, to go to town hall in New York City and give visionary speeches. About 5 minutes to be a visionary, as I recall. And I was about the fifth speaker, and I noticed the first four not only wore glasses, but had rather thick lenses, as I do. And it occurred to me that perhaps the prerequisite for being a visionary is that you really can't see at all. So perhaps you should take that into consideration with the rest of the stuff I'm saying tonight. It's impossible with these people on stage that I'm so honored to be with, these two great comrades and friends, not to tell stories, and so I'm going to heck with it. I'm going to tell the first story is about Walter. Yes, I know you've already heard one, but this is I'll tell you, it's a short one, but it's great. So Bill Fries, I know he's out there, a staff scientist for CFS, a great hero too. He and I went to Molokai, and this is right after Walter had succeeded in stopping the genetic engineering of Hawaiian taro. And I remember sitting at a table with Walter and Bill, and we were saying, so what's next? Actually, you said, so what's next? Because that's the way you are. And Bill and I go, oh, we got to do something here. Bill, you and I said, well, patents. Maybe there's some patents on these taro. Maybe there's some patents. And Walter says, they can't patent my elder brother. So, you know, we went back, Bill and I went back, and I think, Bill, you found 3 patents, I believe, on Hawaiian taro that went all the way back. And these are ancient seeds, nothing to do. They've been patented by the University of Hawaii, and we sent them along and to Walter, and that's the last I heard of it. And then suddenly somebody said that Walter had demanded that the University of Hawaii rescind these patents. And then the next I heard of it, there was a chain around the regents in the University of Hawaii. A chain had been, they were locked into a room, a building. And Walter and his warriors had pretty much said, you're staying here until you rescind the patents. And so the University of Hawaii lawyers, gave him some BS. Oh, we can't rescind the patents because somebody else will patent them, and then somebody worse than us. So we get a call. Walter's not letting him out on that excuse. And he says, is this true? And I said, no, it's complete nonsense. Once you patent it, it's no longer novel. No one could patent it after that. He said, write me a couple of pages, quick. I'll say you're our lawyers. So we wrote a memo. We gave it to them, and they said, he's right. So they gave up the patents. And I don't know if you've seen that picture of Walter and 3 other activists ripping up these patents. And I've been doing intellectual property law for a long time, patent law. To my knowledge, it is the only time that a patent holder has ever voluntarily given up a patent, particularly under the threat of imprisonment. So, I always say, they always say, if you want something done, give it to a busy man. If you want something done, give it to this man. So he's a great comrade, and continues to be. I met Vandana Shiva for the first time in 1989. My organization, the Foundation on Economic Trends, along with an academic organization called the World Resource Institute, held the very first global warming conference among NGOs. And there was about, I guess, 60 NGOs showed up, and C-SPAN covered it, which was great because people, really get excited when the televisions are there. And I had not known Vandana, but she was immediately, of course, the nobility and the beauty of her presence was just to me. I said, "Who's that woman?" She says, "Vandana Shiva." I said, "Okay." So it goes on. It's one of these sort of academic global warming things where they treat the direst threat up to humanity yet as kind of like a scientific problem, And they were going on and on about the developed world and the underdeveloped world and how, what kind of thing. And so Vandana makes sort of intervention. She says, "Excuse me." She said, in my country, we have for millennia lived in more or less harmony with the natural world. And here in the West, in less than 150 years, you've created a almost terminal threat to the planet. So from now on in this conference, why don't we call you the underdeveloped world? And you call where I come the developed world. And they did. And they did. So I had to go speak to her afterwards, of course, not just, and so we discovered we had a mutual interest in patenting, the patenting of life. So she went back to my office and we spent a couple of hours looking over patents and trying to figure out how we could stop this nightmare that was just emerging then. So that was my introduction to Vandana. I know most of you probably know this, but I want to review something for you. The last 15 years or so, and the work that not only I've done, but a huge number of you and our coalitions. I just want to sort of remind you, for example, of what we've done. You remember the genetically engineered tomato, the flavor saver? Remember, some people remember that? No flavor to savor? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we defeated that. We did a boycott on Campbell's, and that's not here. There is no genetically engineered tomatoes. Remember, there was a genetically engineered BT potato. Remember, Arpad Pushtai was fired for finding out that it could hurt people. Great scientist who was really, his reputation was destroyed by Monsanto. Well, we went to McDonald's, and it's a small campus outside of Chicago of about 4 square miles, where Monsanto lives. Everything there is a McVan, by the way. You get in the van, it's a McVan. You meet the vice president, he's the McVice vice president. That's what they call each other, I'm not kidding. So we threatened to boycott them, and they gave up, and there went the BT potato, it's gone. Okay, so we then, and I don't mean just me, I mean as a coalition together, we have stopped genetically engineered wheat. Monsanto's Roundup Ready, genetically engineered wheat. Imagine all the wheat products. Imagine the contamination. That's been stopped. That's been stopped through the combination of legal action. That's not here. And they're not coming back with it. Monsanto had to fire 10% of its employees because of that. Genetically engineered rice, been stopped. No commercialization. That's gone. They tried to genetically engineer bent grass. I think it was called slow-mo or slow-grow or something like that. Scotts and Monsanto. We beat them in court. That's over. That's not going to happen. Then they tried to do these biopharmaceuticals that Nancy was talking about, growing vaccines in crops. Well, we sued them, and we beat them. Those are gone. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Crazy idea. Anyway. Then we stopped genetically engineering alfalfa for 6 years. And we're right back in court right now. Then we just recently stopped the growing of these sugar beets in the Willamette Valley. And by the way, shout out to Earth Justice in Honolulu for legally stopping that algae experiment forever. So don't tell me Monsanto can't be beat. They've been beat over and over and over again. And we can do it again. And counties have gotten together. I was there in Mendocino County when one named Els Cooperrider, who ran the Ukiah Brewery, said, we're going to be the first non-GMO county in America by law. And Els organized it. I showed up with a great farmer and friend, Percy Schmeiser, who went around the county. It was fantastic because we ran the entire campaign out of the brewery. I mean, best campaign ever, right? We were outspent 20-1 by Monsanto, and we beat them. And that happened not in Marin County and in Trinity County. And remember BGH, bovine growth hormone, that horrifyingly cruel product, destroyed dairy cows. Well, Monsanto started getting in trouble because people started labeling, I'm sure you all know, milk and dairy products as BGH free. Monsanto went to the Federal Trade Commission and said, they can't do that. That's mislabeling. And we answered, no, it's not. It's accurate. We won. Then 13 different states Monsanto tried to stop this in 13 different states. We won immediately in 12 of them. Ohio said, no, it's probably wrong. They can't label BGH free. We went to court, and then finally circuit court, and we won. So what did Monsanto do? They sold the product. Gone. So, I mean, recently, I co-wrote the Proposition 37 in California, and, we lost 51 to 49. 51 to 49. They spent $50 million, 50 by the way, $50 million. And they outspent us 10 to 1 in TV ads, and we still 51 to 49. So they know that we know how to beat them now, and it's just a matter of time. It's not a matter if we're going to have labeling, it's when. And it would be great if this were the state that did it first. And there's a labeling bill right now that you can support. Now, patenting is not only an economic crime, patenting of life, but it also is disturbing, both spiritually, philosophically, any other way. Because under Section 101 of the Patent Act of the United States, do you know what you can patent? A machine, a manufacturer, or an inventor's composition of matter. I mean, how dare they in the patent office say when they patent a soy plant or a corn plant or a pig or a salmon that that is a machine, a manufacturer, or an inventor's composition of matter. That has to stop. It's not only... So, a couple years ago, if I'd been standing up here, I would have said, it's pretty hard. We fought hard. My organization has fought very hard over the years. I don't think anybody's fought harder than Vandana Shiva. She was able to defeat basmati, the patents on basmati, and name those amazing things. But you know what? There's some pretty exciting news. Right now, in front of the Supreme Court, there are two cases. One we funded, one Bill Freeze and our staff and others have been just really doing great work on. The first is a case that says you cannot patent the breast cancer gene or any gene. No genes are patented. And that Supreme Court will look at this year. If they say no genes are patentable, that doesn't just mean for humans. That means every gene is not patented. So they'll find out. And then in this case, the Bowman case, this courageous farmer has gone all the way from district court, state court, district court, circuit court, right to the Supreme Court. And here's what he says. He says, all right, you got your patent. But once I purchase your seed, your patent dies. I can save my seed. I have the right to save my seed. And that will be ruled on by the Supreme Court this spring. So I don't know if we're going to win, but how tremendous. I'm not taking credit for this, but how tremendous that so many of us have gone to this point where the court is going to have to decide, and we will know. And if it decides the wrong way, we'll let them know too. But obviously, the work is not done. And as Walter was saying, particularly, in Molokai and here, when we see the invasion of these companies. And I want to say something, Monsanto, I love suing Monsanto. I'm just going to tell you right out. I never suffer from being passive aggressive because we just get to sue them, And it doesn't hurt that Monsanto's chief attorney, a very nice guy, by the way, is named Phil Perry, who happens to be Dick Cheney's son-in-law. It makes victory a little sweeter. I'm not always a nice guy, But I want to really make sure that we know that there are 5 major companies, including in this state, that have equal reputations to our friends at Monsanto. And let's just read them out here. There's Monsanto, sure, but Dow. Dow Chemical is one of the worst corporations ever. There's DuPont, there's Syngenta, and there's Bayer. Dow AgroScience, that's Dow, yeah. So what I'm saying, and by the way, just 3 of those companies. Pioneer is a subsidiary of DuPont. See, I know my stuff, guys. And Monsanto, DuPont, and Syngenta own 51% between them of all the world's commercial seeds. So let's not, when we talk about Monsanto, let's make sure we let Dow, DuPont, Syngenta, and Bayer have theirs too, huh? Because they're here and they need to, yeah, so let's make sure we add them to it. And let's clear up some myths here, by the way. You know, they're coming, well, that's, how can you oppose GE crops when they're going to feed the world? Right? PBS. I mean, you see this all the time. It drives me absolutely crazy. You know, check out the 2009 report by the Union of Concerned Scientists. It has a very good title. It's called Failure to Yield. And it's about what has actually happened with genetically engineered crops. As a matter of fact, genetically engineered soy and a number of others actually have a reduction in yield. All right? And then there's this thing that they increase nutrition. They don't increase nutrition. There's not a single genetically engineered crop that increases nutrition. The one that drives me the most crazy, though, is that they reduce the use of pesticides. All right, let's go over those 5 corporations again. We got Monsanto, Dow. You got to memorize this by the end of my talk. DuPont, Bayer, Syngenta. What are all those companies? Chemical companies. What do you think they sell if they're chemical? Chemicals. So what they have done, they haven't done anything for Africa. The lame shall not walk. The blind shall not see. The hungry shall not be fed. They have created 85% of all the crops out there are designed so they can withstand huge, huge applications of weed killers. Normally, if the weed killer hits not just the weed but the crop dies. They came up with a trick. They inserted a bacteria into these crops. And so now you can spray as much herbicide as you want on them. Good for the company, they sell the seeds, and they sell the herbicides. Some large farmers, hey, I don't have to be careful with my herbicide application. I can just aerial spray. Look, the soy doesn't die. Look, the corn doesn't die. What a miracle. All right? So every year, 115 million more pounds of herbicides are poured on our crops. 115 million. 115. By comparison, all the work we've done with organic, and I'm proud to say that I was one of the people that put together the Organic Food Production Act in 1990, and we defend organic like crazy. You know, defend the standards, evolve the ethic, right? With all the work we've done, we're getting rid of about 40 million pounds of pesticides. They're putting 115 million more. But now something's happened. The biotechnology companies, and they've met Charles Darwin, right? They didn't do their biology 01. We did, and we've been doing it for years, saying, if you spray 115 million more pounds of this Roundup on weeds, what's going to happen to the weeds? Yeah, adaptation. All right, survival of the fittest. The weeds that can survive, and they replicate, so we have 20 million acres in the United States where you can't kill those weeds with Roundup. Right? So the solution is, yeah, Dow Chemicals, our friend Dow Chemicals said, you know what? This is great. We can take over the market, and we can have 2,4-D resistant crops. 2,4-D, which is one of the elements in Agent Orange. So then there's sort of a chemical arms race, because then Monsanto says, oh, we're going to go with dicamba. And by the way, these crops right now are up for approval at the USDA. This is not like some future, this isn't science fiction. Now, dicamba is one of the most terrifying weed killers of all, because it volatilizes. That means under certain warm and wet conditions, it comes back up in a cloud after it's been sprayed and can move miles and drop on an organic farm and kill everything there. We even have huge conventional farmers saying we don't want this thing. So our work is not done. And perhaps one of the most troubling things, which is up for approval right now in the FDA, which still has not promulgated the regulations for our food safety, but has found time to finalize the approval of a genetically engineered salmon. Now, this salmon was originally engineered with human growth genes to make it grow larger, faster, and now they put some pout genes in it to do the same thing. Independent scientists have said that fish like this, 60 fish like this, if they're released into a population of 60,000 native salmon, native fish, can cause extinction in 30 generations. So one thing you can do right away is, right now there's about 45 days left. The FDA wants to hear what you have to say about this salmon. They could destroy native salmon that has less omega-3. Actually, it's a product with no associated epidemiology. So please, go to the Center for Food Safety website, which is just Center for Food Safety in one word, and you can comment directly to the FDA. We're trying to get millions and millions of signatures to say, don't do this. And by the way, please do that. If there's anybody in this audience that doesn't do that, I'll be upset. And you should be upset. This salmon is just, I love salmon. Admittedly, I fish for them constantly, and maybe I'm just trying to make up for being so cruel to these salmon over all the years I fished. But seriously, this is a crisis that we need to stop right away. By the way, the labeling petition now has 1.25 million people that have told the Obama administration, you better label genetically engineered foods. It is the largest response they've ever had at the FDA. You can still do that as well. You can comment on that as well. So two things I want to just talk about. One is the process of genetic engineering. The process of genetic engineering is cell invasion technology. I mean, let's take how do you get a flounder, right? I mean, how do you get that gene into a tomato? Well, what they do is they attach the genetic construct they want. This could be the same with a growth gene and a salmon. They attach it to a vector. It can be a bacteria, a virus that invades the cell. The cell tries to reject it. They put in viruses to promote that. And then in every one of those cells, they put an antibiotic marker system. It's usually kanamycin or ampicillin that these little bugs are resisting. So in every cell of every food, genetically engineered food, you've got the genetic construct that's never been there before. You've got a vector that invades the cell, virus or bacteria, that's never ever been there before. You've got virus promoters to try and stop the cell from doing what it does naturally, which is reject this invasion. And then you've got this thing they need to check on to make sure it got in, these antibiotic marker systems. And the last thing on earth we need right now is something that makes us more resistant to antibiotics. That's in every cell of every genetically engineered food. So when they come anywhere and tell you that this is natural, it's like beer or yeast, you know what to tell them. No, not FY. That's not good. So, I also wanted a little bit today to reflect on how does this happen? I mean, there's a story of Native Americans and they're by a river, and they're washing their clothes. These women are washing their clothes, and they see a baby coming down the river. And they're terrified. They run out and they save the baby. And then they see two babies coming down the river, and they run on the river and they save the two. And then suddenly 3 babies, and 4 babies, and 5 babies. No, everyone's just crazy saving these babies. And then the chief comes in and she says, maybe we should go upstream and see who's throwing the babies in the river, So while we fight every one of these battles, the magnificent battle, which is so beautiful to watch, by the way, and I know some of the people, to stop this grotesque ferry, the battles we're having, each one of us with genetically engineered foods, stop a factory, save a river. Every one of those battles are important. We need to stop the bleeding. But unless we deal with the consciousness that is behind all these things, unless we begin to try and understand it, not just out there, but also in ourselves, there's not enough of us to stop all the bleeding. So we don't just need to work like hell to stop the bleeding. We also, I think, need to spend a little bit of time thinking, why would you do this? I mean, this beautiful ceremony we started, how beautiful the earth, how abundant. Why are you doing this? Years ago I went to a USDA research center out in Beltsville, Maryland. It's about 45 minutes from Washington, D.C. And I was doing a book at the time, and I visited a man named Vern Purcell. He's a researcher, nice guy, a researcher out there. And he was putting human growth genes into pigs to see if pigs could grow faster and larger. There seems to be an obsession with these people, by the way. And so I said, why are you doing this? And he said, well, the pig isn't sufficiently efficient. So I said, may I see the pig 6706? And he said, sure. And I looked at this pig. It could not stand up because somehow the human growth genes had the musculature overwhelm the skeleton. So it was collapsing in on itself. and its legs were about that big, just stubbles, could not stand up. It was cross-eyed, impotent, and could barely move. And I was horrified. And I said, Dr. Purcell, I mean, what have you done here? And he looked at me rather cheerfully and said, hey, the Wright brothers didn't succeed the first time either. And remember what we just said about patenting. You're only out as manufacturers or machines. There seems to be some kind of fatal confusion going on between machines and life here. You know, they're treating seeds, they're treating animals as their machines, and using the machine values on these life forms. That's what we call genetic engineering. This is a mechanism, sort of a mechanistic pathology. This confusion, this technologization of life, which then follows in as patenting, as if you were patenting a refrigerator. So I begin to look into this, and I realize that there's sort of I call this kind of a cold evil. This idea that you can somehow treat life as if it was a machine. And I begin to look at some of the principles that are behind this. And one of them is a wrong view of science. One of the views is that science and technology are the same thing. And let me give you an example of this, the foolishness that comes from this misguided science. First of all, you know, my daughter is here filming somewhere, Kailani. My daughter Kailani is here. And if you were to ask me, Andy, what about your daughter Kailani? And I'd say, well, she's 5'6", 7", weighs 110. Don't get insulted, honey. You're 115. And she's 98% water and some calcium. I'd say, that's not your daughter. I want to know about your daughter. But this kind of mistake of a quantification versus qualification is a real problem with our science, and it had an enormous effect on genetic engineering. Let me give you an example. Do people remember the Human Genome Project? You remember the genes we were supposed to have? Anybody? We're supposed to have 100,000 genes because we're very complicated. Well, it turns out we only had 19,000 genes. Surprising. It's kind of insulting. Well, they recently did the genome of wheat. Do you know how many genes wheat has? 80,000. 80,000 genes. We have 19. So if you take 4 Nobel Prize winners, Watson, Crick, Berg, and Borlaug, together they don't have this amount of genes of wheat. Pinot Noir has 40,000 genes, which makes sense. It's very complex, and certainly more complex than most of the Republicans I deal with in Congress. Okay. Cheap shot, okay, I'm entitled. Corn has 35,000. Oysters have 22,000. 3,000 more than we have. Houston, we have a problem with the gene theory. A big problem. Also, we share all but 375 genes with mice. Now, mice are nice. Don't get me wrong. But 375, that's all? And by the way, they have more genes than we do too. So their reductionist science is complete. They don't understand the first thing about life, much less about the genome, much less about anything else. But nevertheless, they try and force this science on us, and they try and push us into silence by saying, you don't know the science. All right? The other thing they try and push on us is, you guys are wonderful, Kauai is beautiful, but what is the number one thing that you want in a machine? Efficiency, exactly. Efficiency is minimum input for maximum output in minimum time. That's how they want us to treat everything. All right, let's go back to my daughter. I have a daughter, And what if I told you I was a father who was extremely efficient? Minimum input of money and time and energy for maximum input of good grades and good behavior, and of course, minimum time, Good dad? No, I don't think so. I have an English setter, I love English setters, that is the least efficient relationship ever. Food, affection, complete, and she does no work at all. She pees on the rug occasionally, eats an occasional baseball glove, sure. But that's about it. A friend calls you at midnight, you know, hey, Bob just left me. I'm sorry, I've got to give a speech tomorrow. Inefficient friend. What do we treat the things we really care about with? Efficiency or something else? What's the other thing we treat things we really care about with? Love. Yeah, when was the last time you heard that in a legislature or a courtroom? But you know, Lincoln said something. He said, you know, the best warriors are the lovers. He said, people who make war just for war are not good warriors. They'll fight for any side, they'll quit when they want. But if you're a lover of seed, if you're a lover of the land, if you're a lover of rivers, if you're a lover of animals, you will fight. You will fight for that. Lovers are the best fighters. Well, then they're going to tell you, that's fine, but you guys aren't, how are we going to be competitive? Right? How are you going to be competitive? Well, let's go back to my kids again. I also have a son, Nicholas, not just Kailani, and they come back with their report cards. Kailani has an A, Nicholas has a B. Nicholas, you're the weakest link. Goodbye. Sorry, it's competition, son. Competition is the ethic of elimination. If you base your entire society based on competition, it is always based on elimination and someone losing. If people say, we're in a global competition in economics in the marketplace, we have to win over other countries, that means you're condemning those countries to unemployment, to poverty, starvation. If you go to any anthropology, they will tell you we did not survive by competition, we survived by what? Cooperation. That's why we love cooperatives. That is how we will survive as a species, through cooperation, and not just cooperation with each other. Cooperation with every other creature on Earth. It is long overdue that we realize that human economy needs to be a wholly owned subsidiary of ecology. Until we have learned that human competition plays no role whatsoever, I mean, in the laws of supply and demand, tuna fish, they haven't read Adam Smith. They don't know they're supposed to produce more when people want more. Topsoil had never read Adam Smith. There's not a single thing in nature that responds to human supply and demand. So we have an entire economic system that is virtually autistic to the actual rules of ecology in this earth. That's pathological. So don't give me competition. That means you know nothing about how this world works and how we're going to have to work in this world if we're going to survive. I mean, Earth will survive anyway. People say, help save the Earth. No, help save us here. It would just be so much nicer if we could see it when it got saved and be here. The other thing they always say, this happened to me actually, the bird after, he says, you know, you're a smart guy, but it seems to me you're against progress. Right? So not only, you know, are you unscientific, inefficient, uncompetitive, but you're also against progress. And I always say, progress, that's an incomplete sentence. Progress towards what? Progress towards what? I mean, is the way we treat 10 billion animals that we eat in these horrifying concentration camps, really, that we call concentrated animal food operations, is that progress? Is patenting all of life progress? Is genetically engineering the seed away from its refulgency, its resilience, into something you only can use for 1 year, and that actually is invented to resist pesticide, the destruction of the most profound symbol of fecundity we have on Earth? Is that progress? No, they don't get to decide progress. We get to decide progress. We get to say, that is not progress. And not just us. The UN just came out with a report, the ISTAT report, that said the way we're going to feed the world, this is the United Nations, the biggest experts in the world, that said, is not through genetic engineering, is not through toxic inputs, is not through pesticides, is not through the 2,4-D and the dicamba and the Roundup that is in the dust, that's in Molokai, and that's hurting and killing children on that island and on this island. So we know it is these toxic herbicides that's in that dust. That is not progress. That can never be progress. And certainly having plants where we're now going from Roundup to 2,4-D to dicamba, that's going backwards. That's chemical arms race going backwards. And sooner or later, this is again, biology 01. What is going to happen to these weeds? You won't be able to kill them with Roundup. You won't be able to kill them with 2,4-D. You won't be able to kill them with dicamba. And according to Dave Mortensen at Penn State, that will mean 700, 800 million more pounds of these toxic herbicides all over the world being experimented on ground zero right here. Right? They'll be resistant to it. We will have hundreds of millions of acres of weeds. You can't get rid of anything. But meanwhile, these companies will have made zillions in selling their seeds and their chemistry, and then they can just walk away. That's this nightmare that they're giving us. That's a nightmare that we need to stop, and that can't possibly be seen as progress by anyone. So we will define progress, not them. We will take over. We'll occupy progress. And one last consciousness thing. I mean, as we have a system that's based not in efficiency, efficiency is fine for machines, but for a living system that's based in love and cooperation, right? And it's based on our vision of progress. We have to get rid of some of the ways we think about, and I have to get rid of some of the ways we think about ourselves. And one of those is as consumers. We've been told that this is a great consumer movement. Consumer? Talk about a mechanistic idea. I mean, they used to call tuberculosis consumption, because it destroyed the bodies of its victims. You know, fires consume buildings. They would love us to remain passive consumers. There are no passive consumers on this island, I know that. But I'm saying in other places there are. And that's the responsibility of each of us. We're not consumers, whether we like it or not. Each of us is a creator. Like Walter said. You know, whether we like it or not, every decision we will make in the food we grow, in the food we buy, the food we feed our children, the food that we allow in our schools and our communities, is either going to progress this terrifying industrial mechanistic nightmare that has now reached its end point in the actual engineering of the seed to become tolerant to these horrifying toxic poisons, or the organic and beyond, which is the fastest growing sector in American agriculture, which means organic, local, appropriate scale, humane, and boy, I mean that with my full heart. Biodiverse and socially just. We need to defend the organic ethic, but we need to evolve that ethic into local, into appropriate scale, humane, socially just, and biodiversity. That's the house. Organic isn't the ceiling. Organic's the floor. And above that, we build this new house of food. And we're only going to build it not in competition. We're going to build it in cooperation. And by the way, let me just say, consumer versus creator isn't just about food. Don't just read a poem. I'm talking to myself too, by the way. I'm not on top of this mountain. I don't always make the right decisions. But don't just read a poem, write a poem. Don't just listen to music, though it's great to listen to music. You know, write music. Don't just eat food, grow food. Yeah, that's the way to do it. Don't just watch romantic movies, make love. Stop sitting there crying and do something about it. So, creators, not consumers, and participants. Because remember, we're creating only within the context of the laws of ecology, the rules of this great earth. We're not just creators against it. I want to finish by, which I often do, for those who have heard me speak before, with a quote from one of my great heroes, Wendell Berry. You want to try and quote Wendell accurately, because he writes so beautifully that it would be a sin, I think a mortal sin in the Catholic Church to misquote him. And Wendell says, to live, we must daily break the body and shed the blood of creation. When we do it knowingly, lovingly, skillfully, and reverently, it is a sacrament. When we do it greedily, clumsily, cruelly, destructively, it is a desecration. The industrial model has tried to mechanize life. You know, everything on life, there is no unsacred thing on this earth. There's only things that have been desecrated. And in this desecration of our food, I call it the one-night stand. You know? You don't care, it's just eat it and don't care where it came from, where it goes. This desecration not only creates the environmental and health damages, I mean, we no longer have adult onset diabetes because so many children have it. And we have an epidemic of cancers, as people in this community know, and childhood leukemia from the toxic poisons of pesticides and herbicides. So not only does that desecration create all those terrible things, but it also puts each of us not just into a health crisis or an ecological crisis, but into a moral crisis. Because it's the job of each of us, including me, not to take part in that desecration anymore. Never again. Hard to do. But the great thing about the food movement is that we can start that right now. You can say, no, I will. We have a guide on our website. You never have to eat GMOs again. We can tell you exactly how to, no. Please never, ever, ever, ever eat industrial meat. Don't do it. You're complicit in one of the great crimes of modernity. I'm talking to myself too. Don't do it. And the other thing about that desecration is it has spiritual impacts on us. Right? It's a world of loneliness, a world of selfishness. And it is a world of efficiency, competition, wastefulness, destructiveness, clumsiness, all those things. So, as you go to the legislature and make sure that a labeling bill is passed this year, as you fight every battle here, I hope we all together, in cooperation, in love, can knowingly, skillfully, lovingly, and most important for me, reverentially, come together to create a new food future. Thank you.